I would like to present Places for People and Illume's Vice President of Knowledge, Translation, and Impact, Nathan Dale.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. So I just want to share a little bit about Illume and the scope of our activities, and then introduce Tiffany Lacey-Clark, who will be able to then set everything up for our keynote, Nanette. As Vice President, Knowledge Translation and Impact at Places for People, I oversee the research and evaluation activities that we do, as well as the training and technical assistance activities that we offer through Illume. And at Illume, we're really committed to promoting the uptake of evidence-based, evidence-informed, and recovery-oriented practices, particularly in the St. Louis region. So on the one hand, we want to support clinicians in being able to offer those skills or interventions that really promote well-being in people with behavioral health conditions. We're also really committed to promoting the well-being of the workforce overall, so the health and well-being of those who serve people with behavioral health conditions. So that's the scope of our operations. If you're interested in partnering with us on any trainings or other type of presentations, you can reach out to either me or Kara. So now I'm happy to introduce Tiffany. Tiffany Lacey-Clark is the Chief Operating Officer at Behavioral Health Response in St. Louis, where she oversees the organization's day-to-day operations. She has 15 years experience in both behavioral health and business administration. And on top of that is a licensed child welfare specialist and certified qualified human services professional. Prior to BHR, she had worked for Illinois Department of Human Services in the Division of Developmental Disabilities, where she also served as Executive Director of Region 5 Metro East and Illinois Division of Mental Health. And then following that, she was also VP of Clinical Operations at Places for People, where I had the pleasure of being able to work with her. And she continues to serve on Illume's advisory board. She's a strong advocate for social justice and community development, and continues to volunteer within the St. Louis and Metro East area to facilitate regional approaches to jail diversion and treatment access for those with behavioral health conditions. And if that's not enough, she's also working on her doctoral degree, which she hopes to complete in early 2022. Pandemic's been tough on that. But so she has a lot going on. And so we're very glad that she could be here today and be a part of this presentation and all of her work with Illume. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Tiffany to introduce Nanette. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. It's always amazing to be able to be in the midst of my Places for People family. So thank you all for inviting me to be able to share this moment and to introduce somebody who I am greatly fond of and worked with really closely when I was working in Illinois for the Department of Mental Health. So today I have the honor and the privilege to introduce to you all a local, regional, and a nationally renowned speaker and author who has done some amazing presentations and given me some thought-provoking talks. And while all of that is really, really impressive and her bio and her resume speaks for themselves, the talk that really causes me to be awestruck is the one that she gave to herself. Her first audience was herself. It was a conversation within herself that led her to have the audacity of tenacity. Her self-talk guided her to push herself and to encourage herself to not only survive her lived experiences, but to thrive and to use those experiences to help guide other people. As she pushed herself to become stronger, healthier, and better, she became a beacon of hope for those who had not yet started their own dialogue within self. Today, we have an opportunity. We're going to listen to her, to learn from her, to learn about her, to watch and be engaged in her story, her journey, and her ability to not only become an advocate for self, but for those with lived experience who thought the peak of their life was in their yesterday. And for those who didn't have the strength to dream about it tomorrow. Her every knockdown and bounce back sends a ripple of hope to all of us. The greatest work and the greatest audience that we have is within self. And Annette Larson was the person that really taught me that through her lived experience, her living out loud and on purpose. So without further ado, because I can go on and on and on about her because I absolutely adore her, I welcome you to experience the dynamic powerhouse that is Nanette Larson.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Tiffany, what a gift you are. Thank you so much. It's so good to be with all of you today. I just want to thank Illume and Places for People, Julie Blanco, Kara Jacobson, Nathan Dell, Kizzy Havens, and my dear friend, former colleague, Tiffany Lacey Clark. It really is a blessing to be with all of you today. And I always get very uncomfortable right after I've been introduced because I fear that I'm not going to measure up to whatever somebody has just said about me. But I'm going to just take a deep breath and trust and believe that we are all here for a purpose, with a purpose. And those words that Tiffany just said about me are going to be true of you if they aren't already. So I am going to go ahead and move on to sharing our learning objectives for today's session. We are going to identify 5 aspects of care that have the potential to help individuals in recovery from mental illnesses. Within these areas of care, we're going to differentiate between things that help and things that hinder a person moving forward in their recovery. And we're going to describe 5 specific interventions that help. This picture was taken when I was about 4 years old. I am the adorable little one, the littlest one on the couch there among my 3 siblings with my mom. And we are all dressed up for what appears to be Easter Sunday. I presume that from the Easter basket in front of us and what appears to be a bunny that my brother is maybe sitting on. Although I grew up in a house, actually the very house that this photo was taken in with these people, I have almost no memory of this little family in the picture. My memories start somewhere around age 9. And even those are more snapshot type memories than actually clear, coherent memories of this happened and then this and then this. I want to share with you what I know, but not remember about that little family. Before I was born, my mom had been living in a religious community, a commune of sorts in Chicago. Oh, it was the 60s. So what started out with 2 married couples joining together with good intentions in 1966 turned into chaos by 1969, a year in which our entire nation was in a state of chaos. And it led to intense trauma for everyone who was involved. My mother left Chicago shattered with 3 young children and pregnant with me. My grandmother rescued her from the confusion in Chicago, and it wasn't long after that that I was born. But it wasn't long after that that my mom experienced another intense trauma. She was admitted to a psychiatric ward for what was termed at that time a nervous breakdown. And she endured repeated shock treatments that were given to her against her will. The year was 1971, and ECT, as it is known now, or electroconvulsive therapy, did not yet have the protections in place that it does now. My grandmother constantly told us how mom was, quote, never the same after that. Never mind that it was grandma who had signed off on those shock treatments. My oldest brother, the smiling kid in the foreground of the photo, is the only one of us who has any memory of those times. And his life was shattered by experiences that occurred before he had even started 2nd grade. To this day, he's still on the path to recovery from deep internal trauma. For the rest of us, Our trauma was pre-verbal, which means that we had no words for our experiences. Pre-verbal and nonverbal trauma memories typically do not have associated words or clear and coherent story. Rather, they might come in the form of flashes of images, disconnected fragments, or uncomfortable physical sensations with no known cause. I used to think that my family was very unusual, that no one had experienced anything even close to what I experienced growing up. But I've been doing this work for over 20 years now, and now I know the truth. Most people have come from unbelievably difficult and often terribly traumatic life circumstances. Real people with real lives, with real hurt, pain, and sadness burdening their hearts. That's why it's so important that we talk about how we talk about people like me and my mom and other people who end up in our mental health systems of care. That's why we'll begin today talking about why language matters. After that, we'll look at a few ways to define recovery. And finally, we'll look at 5 different aspects of care and see what people, including myself, receiving mental health services, say about what helps and what hinders recovery in reference to those 5 aspects of care: hope, relational, person-driven, strengths-based, and holistic. And by the time we end this session, we'll come back and take a look at that little family, or at least a couple specific members of it. I never knew my father growing up, nor did I even know who he was. My brother, the only one with any real memory of him, was not permitted to even speak of him. I internalized his absence as rejection and abandonment. My mother was essentially taken from me in infancy due to her hospitalization and shock treatments. When she returned to our family, she was a shell of a person, unable to hold a job, manage the household, or function as a parent. This despite having been top of her class at one of the elite colleges in the state of Illinois. I internalized her emotional absence as rejection and abandonment. She was unable to form secure attachments with her children, which led to my inability to develop normal, healthy childhood friendships or teen relationships. In all reality, we never really learned how to be a family. I think my brother said it best when he said, "In our home, it was every man for himself." By the time I started college, I was severely depressed and using self-harm to cope with feelings for which I had no words. Within 4 months of entering college, I was admitted to the local psych ward, terrified that my life was repeating the pattern set by my mother. Over the next 18 months, I was hospitalized 5 more times and eventually given a list of diagnoses that included, among other things, borderline personality disorder. That BPD diagnosis was like taking a hammer to already shattered glass because it changed how I perceived myself and how I was viewed by mental health professionals. I fit the so-called symptom profile to a T. But all those so-called symptoms were signs of trauma that needed treatment, not signs of a disordered personality. The label, however, created a bias against me. BPD is like the scarlet letter in the mental health system. No one wants you. No one wants to deal with you. No one wants to help you. And all of that is before they've even met you. At least that was my experience. That's what it feels like when you're labeled in a system that has the power of words on its side, words that can hinder recovery. But there are also words that can help recovery. Some people make broad sweeping arguments against any efforts to change our language, saying that it's just politically correct. But I pose to you that it's actually clinically correct There's nothing clinically correct in saying that a person is schizophrenic, no more than it would be to say that a person is cancer. A person is not an illness or a disease. A person has an illness or a disease. It's not who they are. Similarly, it's not clinically correct to refer to an entire group of people with a broad sweeping categorical term such as the mentally ill. There are nearly 300 mental disorders described in the DSM-5. And within just one of those diagnoses are untold variations of its expression in the lives of people who are diagnosed with it. The flip of this is also true. The odd sounding and grammatically incorrect phrase, people with a mental illness, people plural with a singular mental illness, to which one of the 300 mental illnesses is this singular mental illness intended to refer. Maybe people in recovery would be better. But when we're talking about mental health, recovery can be hard to define. The most commonly used definition of recovery these days comes from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. It was written to encompass mental health and substance use recovery. It says recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Many people really like this definition. They may like it because it's brief, or perhaps they like some of the key words that are included, such as health and wellness, self-directed, and full potential. Another definition to consider is the one released in 2003 by the New Freedom Commission on Mental Health Recovery. This was one of the first definitions of mental health recovery used outside of research. It says, recovery is the process in which individuals are able to live, work, learn, and participate fully in their communities. For some individuals, recovery is the ability to live a fulfilling and productive life despite a disability. For others, recovery implies the reduction or complete remission of symptoms. Science has shown that having hope plays an integral role in an individual's recovery. It's important to note that neither of these definitions says anything about whether an individual does or does not take medication, or whether they are or are not abstinent from the use of substances. Rather, both definitions highlight that recovery is a process, and that process has an outcome related to the individual's quality of life. Perhaps overlooked in this whole business of defining recovery is what the dictionary has to say. Merriam-Webster, America's most trusted online dictionary, or so they say about themselves online, has numerous definitions under the word recover. The two that stand out to me are to find or regain possession of something stolen or lost, and to return to a normal state of health, mind, or strength. Setting aside the fact that no one really knows what normal is, I'd just like to share that these definitions speak to my personal experiences of recovery. There were many things lost or stolen from me due to the trauma that I experienced in childhood, and many more lost or stolen from me due to my years of experience as a patient in the mental health system. I'm grateful to be able to say that I have regained or reclaimed some of those through my healing journey, such as hope, honesty, and playfulness, just to name a few. And without getting caught up in the definition of normal, I can gratefully share that as an outcome of my recovery process, my health is better. My thought processes, my mind, are far less self-destructive, and I am a stronger person. I'm a homeowner. I'm standing actually in this picture by my garage. I am employed full-time doing work that I enjoy. I'm part of a wonderful faith community. My life is full of meaning and purpose, which in many ways is far better than normal, whatever that is. Defining recovery matters. Many people say that recovery is whatever the person in recovery says it is. And in some ways, that's true. But there are still many people who don't know or understand that recovery is real for people with mental health challenges. If we can't provide a definition for them to begin with, they have no way to know what it is that they're in. If we can't provide a definition for loved ones, they'll forever be disagreeing with individuals about whether they're in recovery or not. I think we can overcomplicate something that's not complicated. Recovery is a process. That process has an outcome, and that outcome has to do with the individual's quality of life. When I was meeting all the systems goals, stable housing, stable employment, and medication compliant, I was miserable, deciding every day whether that was the day to kill myself. That's not a quality of life outcome. It's a meeting the treatment center's goals outcome. So we're going to look more closely at some aspects of care, things we likely all agree upon, and see what we can do to help and what we might be doing that hinders a person's recovery. In this next section, we're going to be looking at 5 different aspects of care and what individuals reported helps or hinders recovery. The information on these slides comes from a report from the National Technical Assistance Center for State Mental Health Planning, titled Mental Health Recovery: What Helps and What Hinders. The research project used a structured focus group approach to capture participants' experiences and understandings. The research team asked participating states to recruit focus group participants from different areas within the state, including urban, rural, and suburban, who had different service utilization patterns, some who did and some who did not use public services, to draw from differing demographic populations, diverse ethnicity, race, gender, age, diagnosis, and etc., and to attempt to involve people who were at different stages of awareness and involvement in recovery. So first, we will look at hope. And again, let me reiterate that what you see on the slides is what appears in the research report. I'm going to share with you a little more about my experiences with these various topics, specifically as requested by Julie Blanco. What kept you stuck and what helped you? So I'm going to talk about recovery as relates to hope. Recovery emerges from hope. So if we're striving to help an individual to recover, which is essentially what we're about, that's why we exist as service providers. We have to understand how to facilitate hope. We have to understand what helps, what facilitates hope, and what hinders, and how not to get into that space with a person. There were 2 things specifically that gave me hope. One in particular was hearing you can recover. This is in part why I feel so strongly about the need for us to understand and articulate a definition of recovery. Communicating that recovery is possible is part of what gives a person hope. And communicating that recovery is possible in a way that does not over define it, right? But defines it in a manner. When I say over define it, right? If we over-define it, right? Recovery means abstinence. That's over-defined because that is setting a target that may not be achievable today. It may be something for the long term. But if we focus on recovery as an improved quality of life, then that's something I can be working toward every day. And I am continually and will be, and all of us are, right? And so working toward an improved quality of life, it is possible for people with serious mental illnesses, even the most serious mental illnesses, to recover. That was probably the one first thing that gave me hope. The second was, Nanette, you're not bipolar, which shocked me, just utterly shocked me when I was told you are not bipolar. You know, I honestly thought the person who said it was a little bit off, you know, like how could she say that? But it was that shift. So that goes to my slides on language matters, because it was that shift in thinking, which she said, you know, quickly. She didn't leave a lot of space, but she said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to diagnose or undiagnose. I'm just saying it's not who you are. It may be something you have. I don't know if you have it or you don't have it, but it's not who you are. Those things radically shifted my life in a very short span of time. So we can give people hope. You know, these are things that don't cost money. We don't have to change our entire system. We don't have to put millions into our system to give people hope. We can do it by changing how we talk and what we say, but we can't change how we talk without changing how we think. Do you really believe the person you're helping? Think of the person that gives you the most difficulty. Do you really believe that that person can recover? Do you really believe it? And if you don't, what's hindering you? What's hindering you from believing for that person? Because that person is counting on you to have hope for them, right? You see in the column under what helps, hopeful staff. That person's already down on themselves, unbelievably so. So if you're not able to have hope for that person, what's hindering you? Most likely it's a lot of past experience. So how do we let go of the past experience or the years of doing this work, blah, 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 right? Your years of doing this work doesn't speak anything to that one human being's potential. It's critical that we understand that. Another critical piece, and this is so, all right, I can't keep saying that because I'll say it for the next 20, 40 minutes or how many minutes I get, right? But is understanding that hope is not true or false, right? We have to discontinue the framework of false hope. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as false hope. We have to break the habit of speaking about, I don't want to give them false hope. Let me explain myself. Hope is about the unknown. Hope isn't about what we know, it's about what we don't know. Hope is about going towards something that we don't know if it's going to happen or not happen until we try it, right? And so, I have done, I've used this example, but literally in live presentations. I'm going to try it in a just a talking it through presentation, right? But let's just say my hope is that, I wish that I'm making this up on the spot, right? But I wish that, here we go. Usually what I say in my presentations, I wish there was a monkey in the hallway. So let's just play with that one since I'm familiar with playing with that one. I wish there was a monkey in the hallway, right? And you see on the slide what hinders is dreams, goals, desires dismissed or demeans. And so if our reaction to Nanette's goal, I hope there's a monkey in the hallway. That's my desire. That's my dream. It's a monkey. I want there to be a monkey out there when I walk out the door. And your reaction is, that's ridiculous. Or that's never happened before. So you're basing it on past experience, or the policies are against monkeys in the hallway. That has nothing to do with my hope. I can have hope for a monkey in the hallway. And telling me that my hope is false, I don't want you to have false hope, is a misconstrued notion that came from probably, good intentions. We don't want Nanette to get discouraged every time she walks out in the hallway and there's no monkey. So we want to protect Nanette. We're going to talk about that in another slide. We want to protect Nanette from having her dreams, always not happen. So we're going to tell her that's a false hope. But my hope is always hope. It's just hope. It's not true or false. If it's a known fact, it's not about hope anymore. It's about, fact. Things we know are facts. Things we desire, hope for, they're unknown things. They're not true or false. They're just known or unknown. Known things are facts. Unknown things are hopes. They're dreams. They're goals. They're desires. Hopefully that made sense. I said hopefully again. Okay. So Julie Blanco also said, I want you to share what kept you stuck, right? So share about interactions that helped you, and share about interactions that kept you stuck. So I'll be doing that throughout this presentation. And so I won't repeatedly say, she asked me to do that, but I'm just giving you the framework so you understand where I'm coming from. So obviously this false hope notion, I think, was one of the things that hindered or possibly kept me stuck, right? But another one is things like, right? I'll just use this one as an example. You'll be on this medication for the rest of your life. Those maybe predictions or prophecies about the future. My future is unknown to you. Your future is unknown to you. I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. None of us have the ability to predict anything for the rest of someone's life, period. But when we do that, we are in such an incredible position of power over people's lives. Just let that sink in, to realize what we're doing, because we are robbing them of something we don't even know about our own lives. And I know I probably touched on something that is a very sensitive thing. When we talk about mental health medications, it can be a really sensitive thing. And I kind of did that on purpose because, the thing is that it could be anything, you'll never blah, 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 whatever it is. But this medication thing is something that has been prophesied or predicted over people's lives. And it's an unknown. It's an unknown. I can hear all the arguments that are in your minds right now. So let me just explain myself. I live with multiple sclerosis. When I was diagnosed, there were no medications for MS. Oh, wait, they had just come out with 3, the ABC drugs, 3. So before my diagnosis, which was in the year 2000, there were 0 medicines, none ever existed for MS. When I was diagnosed, they had just come out with 3. It was huge breakthrough. And it was kind of like I was told, this is if you have to get MS, this is the best time in history to ever get MS because we have treatment. Just 3. And they're, self-injection drugs. But here's what I was told. Who knows what the future holds? We could have a pill form in no time. We'll just wait and see. Now, just think of the difference between that type of interaction versus you'll be on this medicine the rest of your life. You know, so as a patient with MS, I was immediately given hope. Who knows? You'll be injecting yourself for a month. Maybe there's going to be a pill. You know, we don't know. And guess what? With mental health meds, we don't know. We don't know. None of us knows. Medical breakthroughs are happening in all kinds of fields all the time, and we really don't know. I mean, whoever would have thought that the drugs that some of you were taking in the 60s, I wasn't born, right, are now being used to treat mental health illnesses. You know, we just don't know. We cannot predict what a person's future will be related to their use of mental health medication. And so what gives people hope is, I don't know, but for today, this is what we need to do. It's going to help you today. Can you do it just for today or maybe for a week, right? Just think about how much different that is than, oh God, I'm going to have to do this forever. Why live? Wow. I mean, that is the reaction that people have to mental health medications that have such horrible side effects that they would rather die than take them. And so we have to realize how powerful our words can be with these concepts that we might have thought we were just doing the best. You know, we were doing the right thing, but again, some of the right thing might have been a hindrance to someone's ability to engage in the recovery process. Hope is motivational. It is the catalyst of the recovery process. So anything we can do to facilitate hope is critical. And anything we might be doing that could be hindering hope, we have to work against and work hard to defeat those things. And the last thing I'll just say about hope as we move on to the next aspect of care is that role models, and you see role model shows up on the left, role models can make all the difference in shifting a person from hopelessness to hopefulness, right? And so that's the power of peers, right? Or the power of peer support, or if you formalize it, it's recovery support. You know, just seeing that someone else that's like me could do it. And, you know, Tiffany's words about me were overwhelming and humbling. But one thing I know, and one of the things that keeps me showing up every day, literally showing up to my work, showing up to my life, is knowing how powerful my story is in helping people to believe in themselves. Like it's overwhelmingly powerful. Being the person, I'm one of many, many, many people, but being a person whose life story has meant the difference in so many other people's lives in terms of their just going from thinking they would be sick forever to being incredibly powerful people in the mental health field, in the recovery movement, writing books, you know, doing amazing things. That's the power of role models. Someone like me, it always makes me think of, you know, how does it feel to be Barack Obama, the first Black president, when all these Black men, young men, boys have that person now, a real live person. They could see who did it. You know, their parents might have been telling them, you could be president someday, but they saw a real live Black president. That's the power of role models. No one could ever take that away from them again. That's why wherever you work, whatever you do, you're awesome, but you've got to connect people with real live people who are living it, who did it, who tell about it, who talk about their recovery, so that the people you're helping can see it. That makes an incalculable difference in people's lives. All right, so we're going to talk about the next aspect of care, as I've been calling them, in terms of relational. Recovery is relational. Recovery is relational. Now, I just want you to sit with that for a minute. I don't, you can look at what's on the slide. That's good. It's important. You can, hopefully you'll read the report later. I think the report is so valuable, but just sit with this for a minute. Recovery is relational. And then sit with and think about the relationships between the individuals we serve and the people who provide them. That may be you. Maybe you are the people. Maybe you're one of the persons who's providing those services. Here's what my experience as a recipient of those services was. Things may be different now. I hope they are, but I'll just share with you a little bit about my experience. Those relationships are fake. They're not real relationships. I don't even know if we should call them relationships. They're hierarchical, person in charge over your life. You receive, they give. One way, they're one way. You can't give, it's against the rules. Can't give you a gift, it's against the rules. I'm sorry, I can't receive that from you, it's against the rules. That's not a relationship, right? It's a relationship that leads to a feeling of helplessness. I have nothing to offer. I'm worth nothing. I have no value because I've got nothing I can give. I'm not even allowed to give. I'm just a recipient. Even if we don't use the term recipient, I'm talking about the feeling of the relationship of consumer and provider, or whatever term, because this is not about language. This is about the client and provider relationship. They're not real. They're fake. They're one way. I don't know how many times I said to my therapist, you only care because you're paid to care. That wasn't true. She cared deeply for me, but I couldn't get it out of my spirit that she was paid to care for me. I was stuck by the nature of that relationship. I was stuck by not having real relationships. That's why, whether it's the things that were noted in the report that you see on the screen or whatever, how we help people connect and develop real relationships is so important. We need to help people learn how to do relationships. Role plays are fake. They're plays. They're play acting, right? And so role plays have their place in terms of helping a person gain skills, but it's not real. So the outcome or the effect on me as a recipient of services was profound. It was profound. And I wasn't in care like very long, relatively speaking, when I think about people who are in services for decades. So what helped? All right. Those are things that kept me stuck. What helped? My therapist broke the rules. She did. She broke the rules. I never stopped thinking she only cared because she was paid to care. That was probably a lot to do with all the issues inside of me. But nevertheless, her breaking the rules made a huge difference. Am I telling you to break rules? Absolutely not. For goodness sakes, I don't want you to get fired. What I am saying is maybe we want to look at the rules a little bit. Maybe we want to see whether the rules are helping or hindering a person recovering. How did she break the rules? Well, and you're probably just gonna explode hearing these things, She actually allowed me to come to her house. Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that you like give all your clients your home address. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in that situation, she recognized the need for me to have a safe place. I dealt with tremendous issues of dissociation. And so rather than dissociate under a bridge, harming myself, she said, I want you to come and sit in my living room and pet the dogs. They'll help you get through this. She probably could have been fired for it. What else helped? My dear friend Julie, probably the first real relationship in recovery for me. I'll never, ever forget her taking me to get my hair cut. It was probably within the first few months of our being friends. And I'm putting friends in air quotes because I didn't know I was her friend. She worked in the mental health system. I met her in a church setting, but I still felt like I was a client, and especially because she was a mental health worker. And so in my mind, my mindset was that of a client. And she took me to get my hair cut. And she went up to the counter and she said, my friend here needs a haircut. And I was shocked that she called me friend. I couldn't even process that this mental health worker, even though she wasn't my mental health worker, but she was a mental health worker and she called me friend. What else helped? Julie invited me to her church, and she was the minister of hospitality. Still is the minister of hospitality. And basically what that means is you clean the kitchen and you set the tables and, all the things related to the food and these kinds of things. And she said, I need your help. She said to me, I need your help. Can you help me with the hospitality stuff? How did that help? I had something to offer. I was seen as someone who had something to offer. I didn't see myself as someone who had something to offer, but I was being related to as someone, unlike a client who can't give you anything because it's against the rules. Here I was in this church setting, not just you can, but we want you to help, right? That's normal. That's real. That's real relationships. Recovery is relational, real relationships. That's real life. Most people expect a give and take in a real relationship. They don't expect you just to receive. But if you've been enculturated in the mental health system, you can find yourself. I found myself in a place where I didn't even see myself as having something to give. I had to unlearn that. And then the last thing in this section, what else helped? Bob, my first boss working for the Division of Mental Health. Bob taught me about conversation. I mean, seriously, my grandmother would be horrified for me to be saying that. Grandmother taught us how to have a conversation growing up, but I had unlearned conversation skills as a client, because as a client, you're asked questions. You don't ask questions. And so I was going on these trips with him all the time. We'd be in the car for hours going to mental health centers to visit and, screen this mental health centers for various different things. And he would ask me questions and I would answer. And then the ball would drop. There's no ping pong, because I had been enculturated in the system to answer questions and never ask questions. And I'll never forget the day we were driving somewhere and he said, I'm going to teach you about a conversation. That's when I ask you a question and you respond, and then you ask me a question. Wow. Relational. Recovery is relational. All right, number 3, person-driven. Person-driven. I think that this is what you all are all about, or at least when I say you all in this context, I think I'm speaking specifically to Illume and Places for People. I think that's the heart of what you believe in, Places for People. So I don't feel like I need to teach you much about person-driven, but I'll say this, that I remember Julie saying to me, you tell me what helps. And I just stared at her, you know, like, what? Me tell you what helps? How am I going to tell you what helps? You're supposed to tell me. Wow, you tell me what helps. Well, I was at a loss, you know, and she said, only you know what's going to really help you. You have to tell me. And I just really didn't know. I didn't really have a feel for what hell. At that point, I'd been in therapy. Let me just put it out there. You know, how many hospitalizations did I say I had? 5 hospitalizations. I'd had extensive outpatient, and then I was in therapy, one-to-one therapy for 7 years. You tell me what helps. I don't know. Wow. So RAP is listed on this slide, Wellness Recovery Action Planning. One of the RAP facilitators in Illinois said, RAP helps you create an owner's manual for your life. I just love that. An owner's manual. He said, you know, when we're born, we're not born with an owner's manual. And RAP helps us to create an owner's manual for our own lives. It helps us answer the question, you tell me what helps. Oh, okay. So by developing a RAP plan, I think that through for myself. It's a self-directed planning process. I hope that the majority of you listening today are familiar with RAP, or Wellness Recovery Action Planning. If you're not, all you have to do is type in Wellness Recovery Action Plan in your Google search, and it'll pop right up, and you can get loads of resources about RAP. But it will help an individual to work through that process for themselves, or you can support them in doing so that they can really figure out what helps them help themselves and what they can ask someone else to do to help them. And then I want to talk about the dignity of risk. If you're not familiar with the phrase or concept dignity of risk is just essentially about the right to take reasonable risks in life. Reasonable risks are what give us dignity, and they're essential for all of us in our growth and development. They're essential for our growth. They're essential for our self-esteem. Dignity of risk relates to the service provider stepping back and allowing an individual to make choices that maybe the service provider or the loved one of the person who's receiving services feels like that's a little scary. But you know what? Those things that are a little scary are how you grew. They're how I grow. They're how we find out things in life. You didn't know the stove was hot until you touched it. Then you knew. It's how we discover. Sometimes it's how we make our greatest achievements. I mean, I had no money in my bank account when I said I'm going to buy a house. I don't know how many people rolled their eyes at that, but thankfully no one said, that's absurd, don't you dare go to the bank. I did go to the bank, and I did buy a house. Sometimes when we take risk, we make it, and sometimes we don't. But the idea, the need is to give individuals the right and the dignity to try. Some certain types of support and supportive services may appear to be kind and caring, but they can lead to learned helplessness. They can lead to internalized, lowered expectations and cause individuals to see themselves as less capable than they really are. That is so true in my story. I've had to recover the real me, who's a really capable person. But through years of services, I somehow became, in my mind, an incapable person. And I'm still overcoming that mindset. The real world is not always safe and secure and predictable. And we have to allow individuals to step out and experience it. Through COVID, we've pretty much all realized how not safe and secure and predictable the world is. For me, RAP has really helped me learn how to not be afraid of this unpredictable world that we all live in. Number 4, strengths-based. The quote, the top right of the slide, focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. Oh, this category is so rich that I have to be very mindful of my time so that I don't stay here all the way till it's time to turn it over to the Q&A section. Oh my goodness. Let me zone in on the spirituality piece for just a minute. You see on the left that what helps, about near the bottom, what helps, it says recognition of the importance of spirituality, meaning, and purpose. And you see on the right, what hinders is the avoidance, neglect of the spiritual dimension of recovery. So I just want to touch on this briefly. I have found that sharing or communicating about the history of our systems helps people to understand how we got here, and it also helps people to get past where we are. So if you're unaware of this, in the mental health system, our history, you probably know this, right? Sigmund Freud is the founder of modern, I don't think so, psychology, right? And Sigmund Freud believed, this is the part you may not know, he believed that faith, belief in God, was a mental illness or a symptom of mental illness. He believed that faith was pure, literally, this is what's in the literature, pure delusion. That's our history. So we set that in contrast to the history of the substance use treatment field. If you will, some would probably argue with this, but I'll just set it out there. The founder of substance use recovery, or at least addiction, or at least alcoholism recovery, excuse me, would be Bill W. and Dr. Bob, his friend. They believed that God, do I need to say anything more? They believed that God was the only way to recover. They wrote 12 steps, and 7 out of the 12 refer to God. Well, we've modernized it. They don't refer to God anymore. They talk about higher power. Well, it was moved from God to God as you understand God, and then it was changed to higher power. And now they've even issued a set of the 12 steps for agnostics that have no reference to God or a higher power whatsoever. But I'm talking about the history from whence we've come. So we have these 2 fields, and one came from, Freud says all faith is delusion, and the other came from Dr. Bob and Bill W., who said you can't recover without God. And so over time, right? So over time, that's developed into mental health systems that say, we can't talk about that here. And addiction treatment systems that have the 12 steps all over their walls and are having to actually recover from that, because that's not okay either. It's not okay to force people into one pathway to recovery, right? But it's so extreme. It's so extreme, the 2 different sides. My faith wasn't lost or stolen by the system, but it was avoided, neglected, and dismissed. And it was the primary strength I had for moving forward. my faith was listed in my charts. I have copies of all my charts. It was listed as potentially psychotic. Okay. So much like BPD, once it's in there, right? Whether or not the doctor even said it was psychotic, he just put possibly, then every time I talked about God, every one of the people around, the service providers around me in the hospital got squeamish. It was my strength. It was my number one strength. We have to find a way to stop avoiding and neglecting this spiritual dimension of people's recovery, because it's not always delusion. It may be the number one strength that person brings to the table. Focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. I'm not saying there's no such thing as religious delusion. Please understand me. I'm saying that our system is extreme in this area, and we miss the strength of fostering growth in a person's spiritual life. All right, next, what helped? So that was what hindered, right? That was what got me stuck. What hindered, what helped was new ways of understanding who I am, other than DSM-5. Of course, back when I was in the treatment system, it was not 5, it was probably 3. Other than the DSM-5 or abnormal psychology explanations. So understanding other ways, gaining other ways of understanding who I am, right? Because our system, you see on the right, pathology-focused, illness-focused, dominance of medical model is so rich with all of that. We have to work hard to balance it or shift it. If we can't get rid of it, because that's how we charge insurance, what are we going to do to balance that or help people to not over focus on that, right? And one of the things that helped me tremendously was my therapist introducing me to the Myers-Briggs type indicator, a new way, MBTI, a new way of understanding myself. And that's just one. You don't have to like the MBTI. Maybe the minute I said it, you said, I hate that thing. Okay, fine. Right? My point is still solid. It is helping people find new ways of understanding themselves other than abnormal psychology. Another thing that helped me tremendously was the highly sensitive person test, HSP. I've included some of these on my additional resources for further study list that was shared with you prior to the webinar, right? But understanding who I am through the lens of highly sensitive person, ooh, we talk about setting me free. Like, it's not because I'm bipolar or have bipolar illness. It's not because I'm borderline or have BPD, right? I am a highly sensitive person. And maybe that's not a bad thing. Oh, okay, right? And new lenses of understanding ourselves. The VIA survey of character strengths, the Strengths Finder 2.0, the DISC personality test. You may think you don't like any of these. My point still stands. People benefit from being given new ways of seeing themselves other than the lens of abnormal psychology. I think this is number 5. Number 5, holistic. I kind of wanted to start with this, but I needed to end with it. What helped me most? Whole self wellness. Whole self wellness. Understanding that, how do I do this without being able to draw on the board, right? I don't have a chalkboard, a whiteboard, anything, any way to draw 3 circles, but that's what I want to do right now, is to draw 3 circles. One, and then another one underneath it, and then third one underneath that. 3 circles stacked on top of each other. You see the little stones stacked in the picture. Well, that's close, except for that they're a big one and a medium-sized one and a small one. Mine would all be even-sized. And what is that picture? It's a picture of 3 parts of me, 3 parts of you, 3 parts of all of us, right? With the top one being the spirit, the middle one being the emotions, the mind, the thoughts. That's all packaged in that middle one. And then the bottom one being the physical, or the body, the physical body, right? And this understanding of me, this whole self-wellness understanding was given to me. I feel like it was a gift in a recovery class at Julie's church. It's my church now. I've been there for 20 some odd years. But that understanding that shifted from seeing all my experiences through one lens, mental health or mental illness, and seeing my experiences as, and I quote, everything that's happening to you is happening on all these 3 levels at the same time. So, you can't just pick one. You can't just, people have asked me in the past, do you think mental illness is a biological? That'd be the bottom circle, the body. Or do you think it's mental? That's the middle circle. And sometimes people think mental illness is spiritual, like it's demonic, the top circle. But it's all 3 all at the same time. You can't separate those things. That understanding rocked my world. And yet what do we do in our system is it's all broken up, right? And so what helps is pulling the parts together, right? You just I just had this flash in my mind of the old, what was it? Oh shoot, I can't remember. It's the Mr. Potato Head. Mr. Potato Head, and his arms are all skewed over there, and his lips are gone, and his eyeballs are gone, and his little hat. And I mean, that's how our system is. We've broken up Mr. Potato Head, and we've kind of seen it as okay to treat him with one arm over there. We'll treat his arm over there and the other arm over there. And that's not working for people. That keeps people stuck. So what helps? If you're not familiar with them, SAMHSA has put out the 8 dimensions of wellness. I think I put that on my resources sheet for further study. If I didn't, just look 8 dimensions of wellness by SAMHSA online. You can just look it up, right? So where we start to incorporate all these aspects of a person's life into care, right? What helps is drawing things together for a person, not focusing just on one aspect of their lives and saying, well, we don't do that, you'll have to go over there for that. But integrating these approaches as best as we can. You see at the bottom of the right-hand side, there is a specific program that was developed by SAMHSA HRSA, Center for Integrated Health Solutions, which is Whole Health Action Management, or WHAM. And WHAM is a great, again, kind of person-centered planning process that helps a person work toward goals, that kind of pulls all the pieces together. They can do that with RAP as well. But what doesn't help is when all the parts are kind of scattered and no one's helping an individual draw them together and recognize that it's never just one thing. It's never just one thing. And when we oversimplify a person's understanding of the challenge they're having, they stay stuck because it's never just one thing. So think about your own lives and think about how it's never just one thing with you. And you'll be set free from this mindset that they need a medication change. It's not just medication. It's all kinds of things together. All right, so the last thing Julie Blanco asked me to share. What do you still see as gaps, Nanette? She said, you have this position in the system of a 360 view, having been a patient, having been in this spot, and now you're deputy director. Where do you still see the gaps? So I'm just going to touch on a few things here before we go to Q&A. I'm going to reiterate some things I've already said. I still see a gap in the understanding of recovery. There's a lack of understanding within and across systems There's a lack of continuity. There's a lack of harmony. People say recovery and they mean lots of different things. That's a problem in my mind. That's a gap. There's an issue with language. There is continued use of labeling and deficit-focused and disempowering language continually in our system. I see that as a huge gap because language all by itself can change a person's life. Come on, think about that. Like, can you really, like, isn't that incredible to think about how language can have the power to change a person's life? When we really get our heads wrapped around that, we will not ever say again, it's just political correctness, right? Because it is clinical correctness. Clinicians are here to help, right? They're here to treat illness and seek wellness for others, right? Anyway, I've already said all that. All right, number 3, trauma-informed care. I think there's a lot of education that's been provided around the areas of trauma-informed care, but we haven't done enough in changing approaches in our systems based on that information, right? So you see the quote there, knowing is not enough. We must apply. We've got to do things differently now that we know that like 90+% of the people we serve have severe histories of trauma. We got to do differently. And then, wow, oh my goodness, what are we doing differently for our staff? Maybe I should have said that one first, right? Our staff, the people that are working in our systems of care, are experiencing trauma as a result of the work that they do on behalf of people like me. They need to be supported. That in real trauma-informed systems of care, that's number 1, is supporting your staff before you ever change anything in terms of how you address the client care. Number whatever, I didn't number them on my paper. The next number next. More focus on the impact of a person's basic needs on their ability to recover. You may hear that and think, oh my goodness, that's first. We do that the minute they walk through the door. Well, I'll just say this. When we're talking basic needs, I want to mention housing and employment specifically, right? And I said this at the beginning. I was meeting system goals: stable housing, stable employment. Ask yourself, is your goal stable housing? Is your goal for your life personally stable employment? No, I mean, I answered it for you. I'm sorry. I wish you could, speak up and answer for yourself and I could hear you. But no, the answer is no. It's not your goal. We don't want stable housing. I was living in like a 1-room kind of a get up, where a house, an old house had been split up into these little 1-room. Some towns call them SROs, single room occupancies, It was stable. I paid $200 a month. And I did not see anything ever changing for me. That's not a life. That's not a life. Employment. For many people, employment is recovery. In other words, until they're employed, they don't experience recovery. And yet our systems often see recovery as something we'll work on after they get, all this other stuff figured out. But if employment is recovery, like medicine, like I said, words can be, I didn't say this today, I say this sometimes, words can be more powerful than medicine. It's true. Words can be more powerful than medicine. It's true. I didn't get into that today. I'm watching my clock very carefully, but they can. Words can affect the person you speak them to and you. Pills can only affect the person who swallows them. All right, just think about that for a minute, right? Let's go to employment. Employment, right? If employment is as powerful as medicine, it can be for some people, working can be as powerful as medicine, and we hold off on helping them pursue employment until blah, 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 then they never get well. Our system has dismal statistics related to people with mental illnesses assisted in achieving competitive employment. And yet that's often for people the very thing that helps them get well and stay well. Number next. Like I said, I didn't number them on my paper, but this is my number last. We have a tremendous need to improve inter-system connectedness. I kind of mentioned that on my last slide with holistic, right? Mental health should not be treated as separate from physical health. It just should not, ever. Like, we've got to connect those systems. We've got to stop having just purely separate mental health care that is in no way integrated. I'm not just talking about communication, I'm talking about integrated with physical health. Physical health issues can cause the very symptoms we see in mental health clinics. And if we're not integrated, where the teams are talking to each other and planning together in a full treatment team kind of way on behalf of this individual, then we will never be able to get to that place where we see, oh, wow, that may have been thyroid. Oh my goodness, that may have been, why don't we try this? Have we drawn the blood for this? Have we done this? Have we done this? Because if the psychiatrist is the only one treating, it's going straight into a mental illness view, and all these other medications are being used. We sometimes just completely miss that it may have been physical. I'll never know, right? There are things in all of our lives that we'll never know, but I'll never know. For example, if my first psychotic break in college was the first symptom of multiple sclerosis, because psychosis can be the first evidence of MS. But I wasn't diagnosed with MS until 2000. My first psychotic break was in 1989. I'll never know. All right, so again, in this inter-system connectedness category, mental health and substance use treatment have got to get their act together. I mean, seriously, we have to start working in harmony. Wherever we're not working in harmony, we have to start working in harmony. The statistics just show so clearly that such a high percentage of people with mental illnesses also struggle with substance use. People with substance use challenges also have mental health challenges. Substance use disorder is in the DSM. It's diagnosed as a mental illness now. And so it's just absurd that we operate in some places as separate systems. And, and when I say working in harmony, again, I'm talking about that kind of planning process where the individual, the human being, let's say Nanette, is being discussed by both teams together in harmony, planning together. Not, oh yeah, we treat both here at Center X, but you've got the treatment team over here for substance use and the team over here for mental health, and they're not really planning coordinated together. Oh, well, we share our notes on the electronic health system. That's not integrated. And then also under this category of improving inter-system connectedness, traditional services are not the only way. So we have to begin to connect, right? Inter-system connectedness has to go outside of the bounds of traditional systems. We have to begin to expand our thinking to be more informed about and to be educating the people we serve about complementary and alternative approaches. We might have to give up some of our biases about complementary and alternative approaches before we can do what I just said, get ourselves educated and inform the people we serve so that they can make their own self-directed, person-centered, make their own decisions about those options. And that includes faith-based or spiritual supports, which often fall outside of the traditional realm of care, especially in mental health. So since we started with Mom, I'm going to close with Mom. My relationship with her is one of the things that I had stolen from me due to mental illness, both hers and my own. And it's one of the things that I regained through my recovery process. For many years, relating to Mom was a huge stressor in my life. Just receiving a call from her sent me into many panic attacks, even though I always just let the call go to voicemail. I would have to work up the inner strength just to listen to her message, which sometimes wouldn't happen until a day or two after she called. Then Mom's trust fund ran out. Ever since grandmother passed away, Mom had been living on a trust fund that my grandmother set up for her. We all knew this day would come, but none of us knew how we were going to manage when it would happen. When it did, my siblings started turning on each other and on me. I turned to one of the things that I knew best, Wellness Recovery Action Planning, or WRAP. I started with a wellness toolbox, which is the beginning of a WRAP plan. My number one wellness tool was to keep track of many wins and celebrate each and every success, no matter how small. Also in my wellness toolbox, I added a section titled Issues That Need Attention. And I listed out things like finances, clutter, which was a major issue for my mom, storage and stuff, medical issues, and home care. So I could keep better track of all the incoming information related to Mom's finances, numerous medical issues, and everything else that I was now responsible for assisting her with. I also added a section titled Support. And I identified which of my family members and friends I could turn to for what type of support, as well as the systems of care that I could call for support, either for Mom or for me, or for both of us. Maybe the most helpful part of my WRAP for relating to Mom was writing the section that we call At My Best. This is what I wrote in that section. When I'm at my best relating to Mom, I am focused on the desired outcome, which is to honor her and support her in achieving the highest possible quality of life in her final years. Having that at my best statement clear in my mind helped me to refocus time and time again over the course of the 8 years I helped manage her care, all the way until she passed away in March of this year. Other parts of my WRAP for relating to Mom that were particularly helpful were the stressors and early warning signs sections. For example, there were certain stressors that I encountered repeatedly, some that were new due to my new role in her life, and some that had been occurring forever. And once I had them written down with identified action steps, they became less stressful over time. One such stressor was Mom's various illnesses, both physical and mental, that caused her to miss family events. The action plan seems so simple now. Accept her where she's at without taking offense. But until I wrote my WRAP for relating to Mom, I didn't have an action plan, and I lived with a lot of unresolved issues related to a situation that was out of my control. In regard to what we call early warning signs in WRAP, I recognized blame as one of my early warning signs. I'm the youngest of Mom's 4 adult children, but because of my siblings' unresolved issues with Mom, I was the one taking on the bulk of the work. Believe me, it got very frustrating at times. But once I identified my tendency to blame my siblings for not doing their part as an early warning sign within myself, I was able to develop an action plan for it and not let it lead to further deterioration of my own wellness or my ability to relate to Mom in a way that would keep me at my best, which was honoring her and supporting her to achieve the highest quality of life in her final years. Ultimately, My rap for relating to mom had an unexpected outcome. Instead of just surviving those last 8 years of her life and coming away from it bitter and resentful, I was actually able to enjoy her in her final years. Working my rap led me to developing a positive relationship with my mother for the first time in my life. Wayne Dyer says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I'm still changing the way I look at things. Sometimes it takes extra effort to do so, but this much I know. I may not have gone where I intended to go, but I think I have ended up where I need to be. Thank you so very much. I think we're going to take time for questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Nanette. This is Julie Blanco. I'm just so honored that you're here and that you gave this talk for us, and people at Places for People, and Tiffany, even though she's not at Places for People anymore, can tell you how long I've been saying, like, oh my God, I want to get Nanette to come and talk to. I just really wish that all the people that we serve could hear you speak, and that every person who serves people could hear you speak, because I just feel like it's so helpful and so moving. And so thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We do have questions, so please use the Q&A, or I know you had said, Nanette, if people want to, that you are good with kind of like us unmuting folks and you could have a little conversation. So I'm going to start. We have 4 questions in Q&A, and actually, oh, I'm sorry. Apparently my mic is loud, so I'll try to stop using my mom voice and and be a little less excited. The questions we have in Q&A right now are all from Tina Bush. So I'll start with her first one. And then if you want to speak to her, we could, maybe unmute Tina. But her first question was early on when you were talking about that idea of you're going to be on medication for the rest of your life, that clients hear sometimes, and saying, how do you help people who tell you, I know I'm going to be on this highest dose of the medicine for the rest of my life? What?
Yeah, that's so that's the flip side, right? The flip side of our having hope for an individual, while the individual is, and I say it this way on purpose, is determined to not have hope for themselves, or determined to convince you that your hope is absurd. So I would just, share that my therapist, Laura, had a lot of hope for me, and I was absolutely determined to convince her that she was absurd and her hope was ridiculous. And so, I can sit where that person sits, the person who is telling you, I know I will be on this medication or the high dose or whatever. And what I say to you, the person who's the provider in that situation, is, it's not your job to argue, obviously, but it is your job to continue to hold the hope and to continue to believe for that person, and to not get frustrated. Sorry, you might actually get frustrated, but, to strive to not get frustrated with continuing to share that you believe for them, I recognize that you might feel feelings of frustration, but at the same time, just continuing to express verbally that you believe for them, that you believe that they can, you believe that's not necessarily the path of their future forever. And doing so in ways that provide some evidence, like, things can change. Our bodies change. I didn't mention that one earlier. Science changes things, but our bodies change, and so that individual just also might just need more things to put in that pot to stir that hope. And we never know what's going to tip the tide for that person, for them to be able to embrace that.
Thank you. And then Tina, another question she had or thought she had is, with that idea of stable housing, her primary goal right now, though, her population that she works with is folks who are unhoused. And so at this moment, stable housing literally might be their goal at this time, and just how I'm going to read exactly what she wrote for the second part is, it's soul searing to watch people who don't have a home have to go back out to the streets. And it's a huge trauma for the person and for the outreach worker to do that. So maybe that idea that in the short run, stable housing might be the goal, but that it can also be a step point if you feel like that's the end of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really critical to differentiate. Stable housing is a goal on the way to a goal. It's not the goal, and I think that's the difference that, I think our systems have often seen stable housing as the end goal. And it's not the end goal. If a person is unhoused, it is the goal for today, for sure, but it's not the end goal. Housing that is safe and warm and comfortable, and I like it, is the end goal for all of us, and stable housing is the, I'm on the streets, I want to get out of this situation goal, but it's not the end goal. Hopefully that makes sense.
And then, and Tina, if at any point I'm not capturing things well, please maybe raise your hand or just drop in chat that you want to speak for yourself, which is also fine. But Tina also mentioned just that within the system, right, our electronic medical record and those structures and kind of like what's billable and what's not billable can so often drive services. And that sometimes it feels like that kind of makes it harder to do the really important things you were talking about, or the structure of the system.
Yeah, she may need to say more about that. The things that I've talked about today are more about how we talk and relate to people than they are about what we can bill for. Just like hope and relational and person-centered and holistic are very, maybe holistic moves off into the what you can bill for category, but strengths-based, so the first four are definitely more in the how we talk and relate to people than they are about what something that's part of your EMR or part of your billing system.
So hi, Tina, I don't know if you saw that, but we had just kind of said if you want to get bumped up so you can ask your questions maybe in a more thorough way than I did, if there's anything you want to say. Let's see, here's some other questions in the meantime. Where does the greatest success lie in turning hopelessness into hopefulness? What seems to be working? That's from Gilbert.
There's some new studies out regarding hope, and what helps helps people to really latch onto hope. And I did a whole presentation from one of the biggest books that's out on hope right now. And the reason I'm chuckling is because I felt like, this sounds a lot like rap, and the different words, same concepts, like really helping people to focus on what's strong, not what's wrong, right? Rap really helps people to focus on going after wellness versus getting away from sickness, right? So that's one of the keys in rap, is that you go after staying well instead of trying to avoid being ill, which means that your mind is always on, am I sick or not? Which means your mind is always on sickness. Whereas in rap, your mind is on wellness. Am I well today? Am I at my best today? Your mind is on wellness. So that is part of in the new research on hope. What gives people hope is putting their mind on the positive versus trying to get rid of a negative. And then the other is the action planning parts of it, the setting, what can I do to help myself, and so it's very simple, and yet I can attest to the truth that I don't feel helpless or hopeless in my life when I'm reminded you could write a rep for that, just 3 days ago, I was literally in a state of uncontrollable tears. No lie, right? This is me. This is my real life. I never talk about stuff that I'm not. This is real life for me, right? And after a nice conversation with a good supportive friend, she did not, try to interrupt the flow of where I was at. But then we got to that place where she said, maybe a rap, the hope of, yes, I can, right? I can help myself here. I can write just some brief action steps that will help me through this.
I know Tina is pulled up to be a panelist. I want to ask one more question from the Q&A, and then we'll move to Tina. So someone says, I resent being told that I will be in mental health recovery for the rest of my life. It implies that I'm trying to recover from something that I will never attain. I also have clients that dislike the recovery label. How do I reframe the notion of recovery for myself and for those I serve?
I agree. I agree. I do not believe that we need to tell anyone that they will be in recovery for the rest of their lives. Interestingly, the big book, right, which is the 12-step Bible, if you will, on the addiction side of the world. The opening statement from Bill W. is that we are people who have recovered from a state of sickness. Again, it's kind of like what has happened over time with these concepts and ideas that were planted back then. God became higher power, and have recovered became in recovery. And people now hold on to and believe that you are in recovery always. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I really don't believe that, period. And I appreciate this gentleman saying I resent being told that, because I would resent being told that too. First of all, you can't predict anything about anyone's rest of their life, just like I said earlier about medication. And that's true about in recovery. You can't predict anything about anyone's rest of their life. And so I agree with, I don't know that I fully understand the person's saying that clients resent the recovery label, but what I think is helpful is our understanding what the individuals we serve do embrace language-wise, what meets the, what they hear and say is valuable to them. Recovery, discovery, resilience. I had someone write to me yesterday and say it was through RAP that I learned that I could be resilient, and it changed my life. So resilience met that person where he was at, and so it really, we don't ever want to force feed a certain word or words on any person, because none of those things have to stick.
Thank you. And then I know we have Tina. Are you ready, Tina, to ask your questions better than I did?
Sure. It really isn't a question as much as it requires a lot of creativity, creative ways of engaging folks, because many of the people that I walk with are folks who don't have their basic needs met, like maybe not enough food, no stable space, needing clothing, needing to be warm, etc. And what I've found is that if I can't help them find ways to satisfy those basic things, there is no way I can be deemed credible, let's say, to walk with them. So that's kind of where I start from. And it's a very delicate dance and balance to not be seen as the person who is taking care of, but walking with. That's one thing that I wanted to kind of say. I think if I was a therapist in a situation or had a different role, I would take away from this differently. And the other thing that you said about trauma, I can't say this enough. And it's because wintertime is always hard for me, always hard. I hate winter because it's so difficult to watch people suffer outside and not be able to do anything about that because there's not enough resources. So, part of me is an advocate trying to get resources for people. And part of me is a person trying to walk with somebody who doesn't have that. But I really do think that if there's not a way for us to take care of ourselves, like me understanding my responsibility to take care of myself as I'm dealing with the secondary trauma of watching somebody else, another human being, be in that situation, I really am worthless then. And so, when you talk about recovery and self-care and those kinds of things, it's secondary trauma is no joke. It really is not a joke at all. And I don't know if we ever really talk about it enough or give ourselves permission to deal with it. Like we're just supposed to be warriors going through this, soldiering on, more people, and allowing ourselves to be human beings and not developing a hard heart to all of that so that I can keep on going, but being a human person relating to people who are in very difficult situations.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much.
Julie, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Tina. One person also was asking Nanette if people who are on here would also like to get in touch with you potentially about speaking to their organization. Are you okay with that? And what's the best way to reach out to you for that?
Yeah, I think that the final slide is still showing, and it does have my contact information. I am presenting today, not as a representation of the state of Illinois or a representative, of the state of Illinois. So it really is best to contact me through that Whole Health Tech address, which is my personal business address. And so I think, that would be the best way to do so. You can reach me at my business address, nanette.larson@illinois.gov. But if you're trying to set up a, something that would not be, if this is making sense, right? So if you work for a company that the state of Illinois pays, I can do business with you through the state of Illinois. But if you do not, like Places for People, then I need to be doing business with you through my consulting business. Thank you.
Those are all the questions that we have in the Q&A right now. So I don't know if anybody else wants to put something in Q&A or raise a hand, because we do have a few more minutes for anything else.
I wanted to go back to the gentleman who asked about how to reframe recovery. You know, that I believe was the same person who said something to the effect, I take offense at being told I'll be in recovery the rest of my life. But I think I remember there was like a second part to the question, and I felt like I didn't fully respond to that second part. How do I reframe recovery? You know, that's why I presented 3 different slides on quote unquote defining recovery, because I think we, you know, a couple of things. One is that it's really important that we find a way to communicate the concept, right? And the concept we're trying to communicate is that people do not have to be sick forever. So it's not a complicated concept, right? And so if we can find a way to talk about it that is not offensive to yourself, obviously as a provider, or to the people you serve, that's what matters, right? And so some people just simplify it to getting better, you know, getting better. You know, that's why I brought up resilience. You know, some people gravitate to the idea of resilience. The butterfly picture that you, I think, see on the screen right now is the cover of my book, From Shattered to Restored: Recovering Hope, Discovering Purpose. And, you know, for me, recovery and discovery are both, I think, probably equally important concepts for me. I know that there are some fields of social services that really gravitate to the discovery idea more so than the recovery idea. I'm kind of a dictionary person, and so that's why I showed you the definitions from the dictionary. 2 of the definitions, I think there are 8 definitions of recover in the dictionary. But, you know, the reason I gravitate to both recovery and discovery is because dictionary-wise, recovery is regaining something stolen or lost, and discovery is finding something you never had. And I've had both of those experiences a lot. You know, there were a lot of things that were stolen from me, but I also have discovered things along the way that I never had, you know, and I don't think I ever would have if I hadn't gone through this recovery process. And so to me, it's recovery and discovery, you know, but again, it's hopefully those ideas are just helping that gentleman to find a way to think about it and talk about it that he can feel comfortable and feel comfortable with for himself, and obviously more importantly, or as importantly, for the people that he's helping. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we are just about like 10 minutes left. If anybody does have another question, please go ahead now. In the meantime, I just want to say thank you so much, Nanette. And from what I see in chat, it just is clear that people are so moved by your story and your power and the hope that you give us as a provider, but also the way that you challenge us to really, you know, be what the people we serve deserve. And that will be help them better, and we'll be happier and more rewarded in our work. It will help us too if we can really do better at being the kind of provider that the people we serve need and deserve. Someone also asked, how can we get your book? Is it on Amazon, or where is your book available?
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is available on Amazon and wherever books are sold. So any book dealer can order it, or, you know, wherever you buy books, they can get it. But yes, it's available on Amazon.
Well, it looks like some people may have already ordered it during the webinar, so you may be getting some little checks in the mail soon. I hope so. All right, any wrap up? I can maybe throw it back to Nathan or Kara for ending steps here. And again, just thank you so much, Annette.
We just want to take the time today to thank everyone for joining in with us. like mentioned several times, there will be a link set up on our social media outlets for you to be able to watch this video back over again. I also, if there's any questions that may be necessary, you can email me at khammonds@placesforpeople.org, and I can, make sure that you get that link or answer any other questions that you may have. Turn it over to Kara if she has any last minutes.
No last minute things. I was just looking at Annette's book on Amazon that looks like it arrives before Christmas. So some good stocking stuffers if anybody needs any last minute gifts. But other than that, we really appreciate everybody who attended. And thank you so much, Nanette and Tiffany for speaking with us today, and everybody else who helped us out. So I don't think we have another webinar or presentation before the end of the year. So I want to wish everybody happy holidays and happy New Year.
Also, at the end of this video, there should be a link to pop up for you to fill out the feedback survey, if you all don't mind doing that.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Tiffany, thanks for coming to introduce Nanette. And Nanette, thank you for everything you shared. It was so helpful.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
All right.
Thank you so
much.
Bye,
everybody.
Okay. Take care.